Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Travelers DFS Tactics show. Apologies for the delayed start as I just got home from a golf scramble of my own. But we are here to cover everything you need to finalize and optimize your lineups for the Travelers Championship DFS slate this week. Should be a fun show. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out fantasynational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where earlier this week I posted some research around the previous winners of the Travelers Championship, the patterns that they all shared leading into their win at TPC River Highlands, and the players that fit that criteria that are in the field this week. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That'll come out later this evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and he provides you more information throughout the week. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, by the way, you're going to be able to join us in his Substat chat every Wednesday night after the DFS Tactics show here on Calls, as he is gracious enough to host me, and we continue the DFS talk over there. We talk about game theory, our favorite areas of the price board, fades, players that we're pivoting to, and anything DFS we generally cover. It's always a great discussion, so you don't want to miss out. And the only way you're going to be able to join us is if you're subscribed to his article. Lastly, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. In addition to the poll question, which is very, very basic, I had to come up with one very, very quickly. So in addition to the poll question, would love to hear your thoughts on TPC River Highlands and the Travelers this week. Who are you pivoting to? Who are you fading away from? All of that. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2024 Travelers Championship. And we start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening over at the Super Forecast at Windfinder, and I will go ahead and post the poll question. Again, very, very basic as I am in quite a rush. But the poll question this evening, pretty simple. Who wins this week? And I only had 4 options, so I decided to put the 3 10Ks, Scotty, Xander, Ludwig Aubert, or if you think it's somebody else, please put it in chat or in the comments. The forecast for Cromwell is pretty benign. Very hot. High near 90 tomorrow. High of 90 on Friday. Very little wind. At least, especially Friday. Looks like it could pick up tomorrow afternoon. And then there might be some rain in the forecast late Friday. Hey, good evening, Pete. Thanks for jumping in chat. Apologies for the delayed start to the show this evening, but I appreciate you jumping in chat. Hopefully you have had a good week. You had a good U.S. Open, and we're going to continue any momentum into the Travelers, the last signature event of the season. So it's good to see you this evening. Again, with the no-cut event, not really interested in wave stacking or anything to that effect. You could argue that the latest tee times tomorrow have the worst end of it, but I don't think this is enough wind to really justify penalizing them all that much. And again, with this being a no-cut event, not any wave stack. Sunday looks like the wind could pick up quite a bit by the time the final group is finishing play. So perhaps maybe something to maybe think about, but that would be more for round 4 showdown per se. Now there is rain in the forecast on Saturday, but again, it's late in the day and there doesn't appear to be much of it. So really not a whole lot to do with the forecast this week. Pretty benign on Friday. Looks like the wind could gradually pick up as the day goes on tomorrow, but I'm not factoring that in really into any of my considerations. So with that, let's move to Fantasy National. Let's cover a couple of things here just rather quickly. This is a Pete Dye design. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at our top Pete Dye performers the past couple of years. Those players have been Scotty, Xander, Brian Harmon, Wyndham Clark, Hideki, Cantlay, Sungjae, Justin Thomas, Fitzpatrick, Obear, Finau, and Sahith Theegala. The other end of the spectrum, players who haven't played well on Pete Dye designs: Billy Horschel, Peter Malnati, Taylor Pendrith, Nick Dunlap, Bobby Mack, only 3 rounds, Lucas Glover, Ben On, Jake Knapp, Riley, and so on down. Those are your worst performers on Pete Dye designs. Something else that we can absolutely take a look at is short courses. This is the shortest course by raw yardage or total yardage that the players have seen so far this season. So your top performers on short courses: Scotty, Russell Henley, Xander, Ludwig Obear, Eric Cole, Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, JT Poston, Brian Harmon, Tom Kim. And then your worst performers on short courses: Jake Knapp, Max Homa, Davis Riley, Sepp Straka, Nick Dunlap, Lucas Glover, Cameron Young, Webb Simpson, Hideki, and so on down. So we've covered that quite extensively throughout the week. Don't want to go too much further into that. Let's just go ahead and go into the mixed condition model that I have made for the Travelers Championship this week. We start with 15% in approach. We looked at the mixed condition model that I made Monday night we looked at the mixed conditional model that I made last year. We looked at that Monday night. We saw that I only had 5% in stroke gain approach, and I think that was an egregious error. Approach has been very mandatory and has been very consistent year over year here at TPC River Highlands. It is a Pete Dye design after all. So 15% in stroke gain approach, 5% around the green when the rough is long. Look, the rough here at TPC River Highlands is about 4 inches in some places. It is not like where we were last week with Pinehurst. The rough is penal. There is plenty of it, and it runs right up to the greens on a lot of these holes. So 5% around the green, 15% on putting, and you'll see the filter of multiple courses. This is just the Bent and Poa annua surfaces. A quick recap on what courses those are. This is Detroit Golf Club, host of the Rocket Mortgage. We have Oakdale, which hosted the RBC Canadian last year. Silverado, which is the host of the Fortinet. TPC River Highlands, of course. And then I believe there is one more, and I'll have to look here. Detroit, Silverado, TPC, River Highlands, and then Oakdale. So those 4 are what make up the Bent and Poa annua subset of data there. 15% on putting on Bent and Poa annua surfaces. 10% good drives gained on Pete Dye courses. Look, I mentioned Monday that I'm just leaning that way. There have been a few changes to the course after Rory's comments last year, how the course has become obsolete. The tournament organizers narrowed some fairways. They added some rough in some areas, which we didn't cover throughout this week as I started reading more articles about it yesterday. So there have been small changes to the course, but I still think it's going to play roughly similar to what it has in the past. Pete Dye emphasizes being in the right spot on the tee, off the tee, whether that's in the fairway or in the correct side of the rough to give yourself an angle at the green. So that's why I'm looking at good drives, not fairways, not greens. Looking at good drives on Pete Dye designs. Hey, Darnell, good evening. Thanks for jumping in chat. Good to see you this evening. Much appreciated. Sam Burns. I want to like Sam Burns, but I'm probably going to fade him this week. as much as high as I was on him last week, probably going to fade him, but it's more so because of the ownership, because everybody seems to be on him. But it's good to see you this evening. So 10% good drives gained on Pete Dye Designs, 10% in opportunities on Pete Dye Designs. Look, these greens are really small. So instead of looking at greens, I wanted to look at the players who were, these greens are small, so if you hit the green, it's almost an opportunity in of itself. But again, as I was mentioning with good drives and Pete Dye Designs, I want to see the players who are adept at playing Pete Dye Design. Oh, okay. Sam Burns outright just responding to the poll. Okay, cool. Love it. Thanks for clarifying, and I don't hate that. I don't hate that one bit in terms of an outright. But as I was mentioning with the good drives, with opportunities, I want to see the players who are just adept at playing Pete Dye Designs. Pete Dye really favors positional golf. So that's why I wanted to reward or focus on the players who are going to put themselves in the right spots. Their Shoffley Obear should be faded, in my opinion. Live 20 minutes from the course. Course is easy. Course has been easy. They have made a few small changes, but Keegan Bradley last year going 23 under. Generally, the winning score is right about 20 under. So you're right. It is on the easier side of average. The only reason I would maybe push back with you just a touch, at least in terms of Fantasy National, yes, last year was easy, but the majority of the time it plays average, at least for the full field. Most of the time it plays average. So that's the only pushback I would give you on that. And I think 2023 was a bit of an outlier in how easy it was. But yes, the winning scores do get to about 20 or so here. So usually good scores, and with the lack of wind that appears to be in the forecast, I think it will play easier as well. So you're right with that in that regard. So that's the only pushback I would give with you on that, in the sense that by Fantasy Nationals definition, it plays more average. So 10% opportunities on Pete Dye courses, 10% birdies or better on short courses. You could argue not to use a filter here. I don't think I would argue with you too much with that. I did not want to use birdies or better gained when difficulty is average. So it just made sense to use the short course filter. This is probably the combination metric and filter that I'm the least confident in. But I do think birdies or better gained is going to be important to see who wins this week, as we saw Monday night in the prior leaderboards, and in terms of just the correlation between the players who play well here and their birdies or better gained numbers. I do think this metric is important. I'm not terribly confident in the filter, but I didn't want to overload my mixed condition model with Pete Dye with the Pete Dye filter. So I put short course birdies or better gained. To finish the mixed condition model, 5% procs, 150 to 175. I ended up convincing myself that this range is important enough to factor in. I only have it at 5%, but 5% in the proximity, 150 to 175. 5% in par threes. We saw that they just don't contribute a whole lot. Instead, it's all about the par fours. 15% in par fours, 10% in the par fours, 400 to 450. So there's a look at the mixed condition model. Some areas where I might be weak if off the tee does play, higher or more important than I think, particularly distance, because that's why I don't have anything off the tee related. I wanted to focus on good drives gained. So if distance per se matters, I'll be weak to that, considering I'm more focused on the accuracy portion of it. If putting doesn't matter as much, if I have the wrong filter with this birdies or better gain, maybe this proximity matters more. Maybe it doesn't matter at all this year. those are some areas where I could be weak with this mixed condition model. But with that, let's go to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings for the Travelers this week. As a reminder to those of you who are returning viewers, for your information, if you're a new viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which is a straight numerical ranking based on the mixed condition model that we just went over, the metrics and the percentages and all that we just talked about. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a value on how well they have played that course the past 5 years. The lower the number, the better. So that's why you see players like Xander, like Brian Harman, like Patrick Cantlay, who have these very, very low, very good course values, whereas players like Morikawa and Connors, who have not particularly played well here. And then we are playing DFS. We are trying to find unique options. So percent owned, and this is per Fantasy National, percent owned is also a factor into my rankings. So my rankings for the Travelers goes as such. Xander is my number 1 player this week. Brian Harman second. A little bit surprising that he leapfrogs Scotty despite the same amount of ownership. It's just the fact that Brian Harman has played better here. So that's what's giving him the boost over Scotty. As you see, Scotty was number 1 purely by the metrics. So Scotty's third, Keegan's fourth, Patrick Cantlay rounds out my top 5. Sungjae, Ludwig Aubert, Russell Henley, Hideki, and Victor Hovland round out my top 10. Look, no real surprise here in terms of who is in my top 10. Probably the biggest surprise being Sungjae, considering he was 13th in terms of the purely by the numbers. Not necessarily the best course history here. It's been fine, but not necessarily the best. He's really rising due to, at least per Fantasy National, the lack of ownership. Sorry, moving papers out of my way. Henley makes a lot of sense. You see he rated 7th. Hideki was all the way to 16th in terms of purely by the numbers. But his course value, he's only played once here, but he did top 15 this last year. And his ownership isn't astronomically high. He sneaks into the top 10, but really, other than the ordering, I don't have much of a gripe here. I'm not surprised by who is in my top 10. So let's go ahead and sort on the price board, figure out where our fellow contestants are going in various areas of the price board, and see how we can maneuver around the chalk in the areas. So in the 10Ks, in the 5 digits, we have 3 players thanks to Rory's withdrawal. Scotty is at 12.5, Xander is at 11.2, Ludwig Aubert is at 10.2. You see all 3 of these players right in the top 7. Xander number 1, Scotty 3rd, Aubert 7th. I mean, I like all 3 of these players this week. Much to maybe returning viewers' surprise, I'm actually back on Scotty this week. It's surprising to see him be the lowest projected owned player in the 10Ks. He's still garnering 20%, but it looks like some, at least per Fantasy National, have soured on Scotty considering the lackluster performance at the U.S. Open last week. I think this is a pretty darn good fit for Scotty Scheffler. Yes, the putter is always going to be balky, but number 1 in irons, number 1 in par 4s, good drives gained and opportunities. I mean, the guy is the number 1 player for a reason. I really like Scotty. I really like Xander, but you can't play all 3 of these guys. So I'm really having a tough time choosing who to fade in the 10Ks. And it very well might, I very well might play all 3 of these guys a decent amount, which means I would be off of the 9Ks, which I'm okay with generally, in the general sense. But I mean, I just really, really like all three of these. I think Ludwig Aubert is going to be very, very solid. He topped 25 this last year, so he does have some course history or course knowledge here. Xander, winner 2 years ago, he has played exceptionally well here at TPC River Highlands. The most projected owned player per Fantasy National. But this week I will be using some Scotty Scheffler. Absolutely. Last week was solid for me because I faded Scheffler. I only had him in 2 of my 25 lineups, maybe 3. Like I said last Wednesday, I was not going to be in the 25% Scotty Scheffler exposure. And it turned out to work very well in my favor. So I am going to be back on Scotty Scheffler, especially if he's the lowest owned of these 3. I just really like Scotty this week. So simply because he is the least owned in the 10Ks, I think I'm going to make him my number 1 player in the 10Ks. I'll make Aubert second and Xander third only because, I mean, he is going to be pretty darn popular this week for a good reason. I mean, his worst statistic, is good drives at 26th. It's solid. It's very solid. But I think I'm going to have the most exposure to Scotty. I'll have quite a bit of Aubert. I'm very high on him this week. And I'll have a decent amount of Xander, but I'll probably have the least amount of him. Moving into the 9Ks, Morikawa, Cantley, Hovland, Matsuyama, Fleetwood, and Burns. If I'm very, very confident and going to be using a lot of the 10Ks, that means I'm going to have to fade the 9s. Having said that, I do like Hideki. It is very, very rare that you get positive putting from Hideki on a course. It is only 1 year, so it's a very, very small sample size. But he gained strokes last year here at TPC River Highlands. I'm willing to run with that a little bit, extrapolate that a little bit, and say that he might like putting on these greens. So I will be using Hideki quite a bit. I actually am going to fade Morikawa again. You see the course value, it has not been good here. He has not been good at TPC River Highlands. Cantley has been fantastic. I think last week was a little bit of fool's gold. He had his irons very, very well, no doubt about that. But he had a very good putting week last week. I'll change the page view. Cantley had a stellar putting week last week, gaining 5. I think he comes back down to earth. I was so high on him at the Memorial, a place where he generally plays extremely well, and he just didn't. He didn't play well. So I'll take the chance that Patrick Cantley comes back down to earth, especially since it seems like, at least per Fantasy National, people are starting to gravitate towards him again. So I'll fade him. I do like Hideki. I'll probably use Victor a time or two. No thanks on Morikawa. No thanks on Tommy. And Sam Burns, even though he has been pretty good here, I don't like the ownership. And he's got a few things worrisome about him. Particularly, this proximity isn't great for him. He hasn't been good with the par 3s. Yes, it's only 5%, and there wasn't a lot to be gained, but it's still worrisome. The around the green hadn't been great. So I will fade Burns in DFS. A lot of it is due to the fact of his ownership. And that's what I really liked Sam Burns last week because of the lack of ownership. So it's really just about an ownership. It's the ownership perspective for me about Sam Burns. So there's a look at the 9Ks. Again, I really, really like Hideki. I'll be using him quite a bit. I'll use a little bit of Hovland. I'll fade Cantley. I'll fade Morikawa. Fade Fleetwood and Burns. Moving into the 8s. Tony, Sahith Theegala, Keegan, Russell Henley, JT, Connors, Harmon, Spieth, Tom Kim, and Fitzpatrick. While there's several players I like in the 8Ks, I don't think I'll be here very much because I'm going to be using a lot of these players. In fact, I might be making lineups with two 10Ks, meaning we're going to have to find some 6K plays that we want to play. In the 8s, however, I do like Tony Finau this week. Not terribly concerned with the putter. He hadn't been fantastic here, but I do like Tony Finau. His game has matured quite a bit. I like Sahith Theegala. It's going to be pretty chalky, so I'll try to limit my exposure to him. I want to fade Keegan, but my goodness, he just loves this tournament. I mean, local guy, or at least northeastern guy, so he loves this tournament. It's really hard to ignore Keegan here, considering how well he's been playing lately. Henley, I think, is getting a little bit too much ownership. I worry about the putter. He's not the best on Pete Dye courses. Henley, again, is a fade on the ownership. Connors is a fade, especially if I think around the green is going to matter, because his around the green game has not been good. It's hard to ignore Brian Harmon and his exceptional course value. I want to like Tom Kim as well, but that ownership is creeping up there. But this does feel like a pretty darn good Tom Kim fit. You think about like Sedgefield, all the comparisons and similarities between Sedgefield and here. Feels like a pretty good fit for Tom Kim. So in the 8Ks, I'll definitely use these two. I'm going to reluctantly use Keegan Bradley. I'll use Brian Harmon. That is chalk I'm comfortable eating. He has always just been very good here. And Tom Kim feels like a good play, but man, that ownership's pretty high. Moving into the 7s. Let's go with the upper 7s. Darnell, you mentioned Sepp Straka. Really like Sepp Straka. I'm hoping the Fantasy National community is a little bit higher on him than, say, the general public. I'm hoping his lackluster performance last week brings people off of him. The course value isn't the best, but there's a lot to like here. The irons, generally one of his weaker aspects of his game, has been really good lately. Par 4s are always good. The around the green is better than what is showing here. He just got exposed to the unique challenge that Pinehurst presents. So I do like Sepp Straka. I'm with you on that. There is a chance he's still going to be chalky, though. So be mindful of that. But elsewhere in the upper 6s, or excuse me, the upper 7s, I don't like a whole lot. Like, I just don't know how I feel about Sungjae. The miscut at the U.S. Open. I would have thought his ownership would be a little bit higher. It's not. Look, I've tried to play Wyndham Clark lately. It's backfired on me. So I'm not particularly there. I'm much more like Shane Lowry when it's tough. This is on the easier end of average. So no thanks there. Although he does play Pete Dye designs well. Not necessarily in love with Shane Lowry. Max Homa has horrendous history here. Just horrendous. So no thanks. So really in the upper 7s, it's kind of Sepp Straka or nothing. Unfortunately, at least per Fantasy National, it's kind of the way it looks, elsewhere too. If ownerships do end up being just like this, I have to call Sepp Straka a fade. I just do. Because he's going to be the most played player in the upper 7s if these ownerships do in fact come to fruition. And I like the guy. He was, little foreshadowing, a little spoiler on my betting card. He was the first name I clicked this week on an outright. I really like Sepp Straka, but in terms of DFS, man, it's hard to back a guy who's the only chalky play in his range. Moving into the mid-sevens, I like Denny McCarthy. I'm not terribly worried about the irons. I think this is a good course fit despite the lack of success he's had here. I don't like Seabez at all, and I know he's getting a lot of attention, so Seabez is a fade for me. I want to like Poston, just like Tom Kim. This feels like a good JT Poston fit, but you see the course value here. He has been literally all or nothing. 4 missed cuts and a runner-up. That is JT Poston's history in the past 5 years here at TBC River Highlands. So it's quite boom or bust. I'm willing to fade that because he's been really bad here except for one exceptional year. Pendrith and Batia getting some looks. No thanks, really. Batia has been pretty bad on Bent and Poa-annua, but his win, one of his wins, was at the Barracuda, which is Bent and Poa-annua. It just doesn't get factored into Fantasy National because it's not a stroke play event. So he's probably better than last on this surface, but I don't know. Got some questions on those guys. And at the bottom half, the very bottom of the 7, I'm just nowhere near these guys really. I mean, Tom Hoagie was middling because of the irons. He gives himself plenty of opportunities, but you want to talk about a guy that can spray it and he's not long. That's Tom Hoagie. He is just not good off the tee at all. He's not been good around the green. So I've got some concerns with Tom Hoagie as well. So if I'm playing all 3 of these guys in the 10Ks, if I like Hideki and I want to use some Hovland, I'm definitely going to have to find some 6Ks. Fortunately, I honestly believe there are a handful of guys that are going to be pretty useful this week in the 6Ks. Let's start at 6,500. Seamus Power. Irons have been good. You see this course value. It's been pretty darn solid. He looks like he is the chalkiest 6K play. Okay, he's second behind Ben Griffin, which makes some sense. Ben Griffin probably is fine. It's only one time. He played this last year and missed the cut, but probably fine. But I want to highlight Seamus Power. The irons have been good. Again, he's played Pete Dye Designs okay. He's also the number 1 proximity player from 150 to 175. So if you're putting an extra emphasis into proximity, then again, gives Seamus Power a little bit of a boost. But he is the second most chalky play in this in the 6Ks, so be a little mindful of that. I want to highlight Victor Paris. He rated out fairly low for me, but the irons are still good. He's been fine on Bent and Poa-annua. It's a small sample size. He's getting hurt by the fact that he hasn't been good at the shorter par 4s and these the 150 to 175 procs. But at 6,500 and 5%, to get a guy that's top 20 in this loaded field with his irons, I'd be willing to take a chance on that. So I do like Victor Paris in that regard. I want to highlight Eric Cole. Shorter the course, the better it is for him. Think about his performance at the Honda and all of his other top finishes. They've been on short courses. This is a very short course. Also not getting a whole lot of ownership. Top 10, Bent and Poa-annua putter. Second on birdies or better on short courses. So he's going to get you some points in DFS contests, I think. Two more that I want to mention. I do want to mention Cam Davis. Look, I know he rated out horrendously. One of the bottom few players for me. This is all a gut feeling. This is all just an instinct that I have. I think Cameron Davis might be pretty useful here. And then the last player I want to highlight in the 6Ks is Brendan Todd. Anytime you're talking about short game, putting and around the green, opportunity, like he's top 10 in opportunities on Pete Dye Designs, think about Brendan Todd. Again, remember, there's no cut, so these guys are guaranteed 4 rounds to accrue some points. All it takes is a top 30 from Brendan Todd, and especially at 4%, and you're probably gaining quite a bit on our fellow contestants. So there's a look at the price board where at least members of Fantasy National seem to be gravitating. Let's start making some lineups. We'll start with tiers contests for those who play tiers. Tier 1, with Rory's withdrawal, we only have 2 players, Scotty and Xander. Whoever you think the lesser of the 2 owned will be in a tiers contest, that's who I'm going to suggest you take. I would have to... I'm hard-pressed to believe Scotty would be less ownership than Xander in a tiers contest, but all I can go by is this, which is, of course, classic lineups. So I'm going to say Scotty with the caveat of whoever you think is the lesser owned of the 2, take that player. So I'll say Scotty. It very well could be Xander. Whoever you think is lesser owned. Tier 2. We have Ludwig Aubert, Colin Morikawa, Cantlay, Hovland, and Tommy Fleetwood. Pretty clear Ludwig Aubert for me. If you're a big believer in course history, Cantlay's an option. Although I've given you my reasons why I think he comes back down to earth. Hovland's okay, but one of the main reasons why I told you or recommended to take the lesser of the owned players in Tier 1, whoever you perceive as the lesser owned. That's why I told you to take them, because I knew I was going to take chalk in Tier 2 with Ludwig Aubert. Just love everything about Aubert this week. Tier 3, Hideki, Sam Burns, Tony Finau, Tagala, and Keegan. Again, a pretty darn loaded tier. I like Hideki. Hey, Awaken. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you're ready for the Travelers Championship. You had a good U.S. Open and such. Really appreciate the support and you jumping in chat this evening. Tier 3, again, I like Sam Burns and an outright play, but anything to do with DFS, I'm probably going to fade him. So to me, I kind of eliminate Burns in that regard. Again, if you're a big believer in course history, take a long look at Keegan. See Tagala, I feel pretty strongly about. Finau's a little speculative, maybe. But I really like all 4 of these players. I'll go Hideki in Tier 3 over Keegan, but it's pretty darn close. And then a third, again, pretty darn close, Keegan. Tony Finau 4th, and I don't hate Tony Finau by any means. I think he's just 4th in this tier, and then Burns is 5th for me, and I'll try not to use any Sam Burns. Tier 4, Henley, JT, Connors, Harmon, Spieth, Tom Kim, and Sungjae. If you think Tom Kim is going to be exceptionally less owned than Harmon in Tier 4, I would take Tom Kim. If you think he's going to be much less owned, I mean, I'm talking maybe 5 to 10% less owned than Harmon, then I would take Tom Kim. Otherwise, it's a very clear Brian Harmon. Don't care how chalky he is. I just really like Brian Harmon. This is chalk I'll eat even in classic lineups. So give me Harmon in Tier 4. Tier 5, Fitz, Straka, Homa, Lowry, Wyndham Clark, Adam Scott, and Ben On. Just give me Sepp Straka, I guess. I mean, he's going to be probably the most popular player in this tier, but God, I don't want anything to do with anybody else in this tier. Max Homa, his course history is horrendous. I much prefer Lowry when it's more difficult. I prefer Fitzpatrick when it's difficult. You see his course value is bad. The metrics still like Wyndham Clark, but man, he's not performed very well lately. Adam Scott, this course value seems fine. He's only played here once in the past 5 years, maybe twice. Maybe it's Adam Scott. If you want to get off the Sepp Straka chalk, I would suggest going to Adam Scott in Tier 5, but I'll still take Sepp Straka. And then Tier 6 is Rose, Kirk, Griffin, Eckroat, Pavone, Hadwin, and Fowler. Ugh. More yuck. My goodness. Ugh. Like, Rose and Kirk, you've seen their course history. It's terrible. Griffin makes a lot of sense because he's only 0 for 1. Eckroat, oh my gosh. I hate this tier. Last week I took Tiger. You can blame me that he missed the cut since I never take Tiger. And I took him in Tier 6 last week and he didn't make the cut, so you can throw all your vitriol at me for that. But I hate everything about this tier. Ugh. I guess give me Austin Eckroat, but man, I don't like that at all. I really don't. I mean, I guess I'll go with the fact that he's generally a decent ball striker. Like, if we compare Griffin and Eckroat, because it's between those two in Tier 6. Like, Griffin's irons have actually been a little bit better. Par 4s are much to Griffin. Good drives is much to Eckroat. They both struggle with birdies, or better on short courses. Like, Griffin rated out so much better, but he might be the chalky play in the tier. I don't know. It's between those two. I'll take Eckroat. If you take Griffin, I don't blame you. So Tier 6, or excuse me, this tier's construction goes, I'm going to say Scotty. It's whoever you think the least of the owned of the two are. Whether you think it's Xander or whether you think it's Scotty, take that player. I'll say Scotty only because of what FNGC says for the classic lineups. So this tier's construction goes Scotty, Ludwig Aubert. I'll take Hideki in Tier 3. Tier 4, I will take Brian Harmon. Tier 5 was Sepp Straka. If you want to get off the chalk, take Adam Scott in that case, but I think it's a pretty clear Sepp Straka. And then Tier 6, I'll say Eckroat. It very well could be Ben Griffin. All right, let's move to classic lineups. Figure out how we are going to maneuver around the chalk in our big GPPs and gain some leverage on our fellow contestants. All right, so surprisingly, it seems like Xander is the most projected on player over Scotty. So we're going to start our chalky lineup with Xander. If we're going to try to mimic the lineups that we think we're going to see this week, Xander, Ludwig Aubert also gaining a ton of attention. Very well could be that that our fellow contestants are going Xander and Ludwig. If they do that, that's probably an average of what? 70, 71? Yeah, 7,200. So they won't be able to fit too much. Like, Ben Griffin's getting a little bit in the 10Ks. Pendrith and Batia at 72. So if we did Pendrith, Batia, and Griffin, this leaves them 74. Seabez is getting some attention. So if our fellow contestants are trying to squeeze in a Xander Ludwig, they're more than likely filling this out with the upper 6s and lower 7s. Is how that's probably going to go, would be my guess. Otherwise, it looks like it's Xander, probably Morikawa, who's not going to save them too much anyway. Xander, Morikawa, probably coming down to a Harmon who's getting a whole lot of attention, or Connors. I mean, even so, they're averaging 6,900 per player here. I mean, that's just a lot. That's just a lot. They might go Xander Cantley. Still at 7,300. So if we go Griffin, Batia, Pendrith, who's that leave them with? 8,000. So they can move this now at Sepp Straka. So if they go Xander, you see the difficulty in trying to squeeze in a Xander and another top play, like a 9 or even a 10. If they go Ludwig Gobert, that opens them up a whole lot. And that's probably why he's getting a whole lot of ownership, other than the fact he's also a very good player. Ober, Morikawa would be in this. Then to drop down to maybe Connors, because we used Harmon in that other lineup. Straka, Seabez, JT Poston we haven't thrown in a lineup yet. Again, this is Pendrith and Batia. But there's a look at some of the chalkier builds. And something that I changed this week, instead of doing an average percentage where I would say, looking for 10% or 11% or whatever, I have started to do the cumulative ownership, because that seems to be the question that people tend to ask themselves. So I went ahead and changed this to a cumulative ownership as opposed to an average. Me as a statistician, as a mathematical minded person, I think in averages. That's why I had it that way. Let's try to build, I'll call it a more balanced build, but if they start Colin Morikawa, maybe come down to like Sam Burns, who's getting some ownership. Definitely Russell Henley. Again, Harmon and Connors. Maybe Tom Kim we haven't thrown into a lineup yet. 7,250 again is, Poston and Batia would be the most chalky way to finish this lineup. This is a more balanced look. Looking at it like a 95 to 100% cumulative ownership. Very, very high. We're trying to shoot for about 80%, give or take. It's going to be a lot harder in a signature event in a small field, but we're still trying to shoot for that, 80 to 85%. You might be able to get away with something a little bit higher if you play a very, very unique play. So how are we going to maneuver around all this? Well, I've told you I am in the 10Ks quite a bit, so let's think about a more balanced build per se. I'm going to start this with Hideki. I don't mind Victor. I've mentioned how I'm coming off of Cantlay this week. Morikawa is just a scary fade for me. But I don't like this course value, his course history here. So we're going to start with Hideki, and then we're going to live kind of in the 8s. I like Finau. I think he's a little bit more speculative. So I'm going to go with Sahith Theegala, Keegan. Justin Thomas would be the pivot in this range. I don't necessarily like JT this week. Brian Harmon's going to be way too popular, I think. And this is why I haven't been building these lineups, because there's just not a lot of leverage to gain for me using players that are unique. Like I don't want to use Justin Thomas. I don't particularly want to use Jordan Spieth. We got 7,500 per player, like Denny McCarthy, probably fine. And then, in the low 7s, not a whole lot down here that I'm excited about. not really. Siwoo, J-Day, it is a no-cut event, so the irons probably don't force him to miss the cut, but oof. Scary, scary iron play. This is just why I haven't been building these lineups. Not particularly interested in Billy Horschel. Like, Harris English has some pretty good course history, if you want to go that way. I mean, he did win this 3 years ago. But, you know, I'm just kind of not here. This is not the kind of lineups I've been building. Just to round this out, let's go. Yeah, I'll just throw in Harris English, I guess. Like, there's a, you know, kind of a little bit higher on the what we're shooting for in terms of cumulative ownership, but you know, in a small field like this, you're probably looking at a fairly unique lineup, especially if you're willing to go McCarthy and English. Hey, Josh, good seeing you in chat this evening. Hope all's been well. What type of players do no-cut events help? I would say bad putters. I would say bad putters benefit the most because their putter just won't take them out of the tournament. I know I just said that about Jason Day and the irons, but if somebody has a big glaring weakness, you can use that to off the tee, but I really do think TBC River Highlands mitigates off the tee play. So I would say, generally speaking, it helps the bad putters. The only reason I might pump the brakes a little bit on that is because TBC River Highlands emphasizes putting so much. But, you know, generally players like Scheffler, Obear, I mean, even Henley, these guys, they're going to accrue points because it's all 4 rounds. Their putter's not going to take them out of it. So I've shown you a balanced lineup. It's not really where I'm at. So how am I trying to gain some leverage and maneuver all around the chalk that is going on? Hope you win some big money this week. Thanks. Same to you, Josh. Hopefully we continue some success. It's been it's been a roller coaster the past month or so. I'm just being forthright here. Going back to the PGA, that was a good week. And the Charles Schwab was bad. And then the RBC Canadian was solid. It was okay. And then the Memorial was bad. They're just horrible. And then last week, the U.S. Open was fairly solid. So if we're following the pattern says it's probably not going to be a good week. So we're going to try to keep the momentum from the U.S. Open. And how I think we're going to do that, I told you, if he is indeed the lowest owned 10K, that to me is just mind-boggling. Because he's played really well here. Maybe not as well as Xander, but he's played really darn well here. He finished third here last year. Or I know for a fact it was top 5. I think it was third. The guy's still the number 1 player in the world. So I'm going to be extremely overweight on Scotty. I do not mind one bit combining a Scotty and a Xander, a Scotty and a Ludwig, because even though we are averaging 6,800 per player, I gave you 3 or 4 names in the 6Ks that I like. I'm comfortable going all the way down to a Brendan Todd. I'm going to take a shot on a Cam Davis. This is completely a gut feeling on my end, because nothing analytically says to look at Cam Davis. This is just an instinct on mine. So I'm going to make sure I have Cam Davis in a lineup. I actually do like Eric Cole quite a bit. Seamus Power, Victor Paris. These guys, I don't mind doubling the 6s this week. So just to emphasize the pricing and the uniqueness, I will use Brendan Todd, but you don't have to by any means. I'm going to use Brendan Todd. I like Eric Cole. I like Victor Paris. So now we're back in this 7,400 range where, you know, if you wanted to throw a Sepp Straka in, you probably could. Adam Scott might be okay. For me, it'd be more like a Denny McCarthy and a... you know what? In fact, why don't we just do 3, like a 666? I know it seems hellacious, but let's go. I really like Seamus Power as well. Yeah, I mean, now we got 8,300. We could go Brian Harmon and all of his course history. Tom Kim seems like it'd be a good fit. So we'll throw Brian Harmon into this. Even with these three big guns or big chalky plays, the fact that you're willing to triple dip into the sixes, you're not even at an 80% total cumulative. I mean, this is the epitome of a superstars and super scrubs. I get it. But these are the kind of lineups that I've been more gravitating towards this week. Maybe it's not Scotty and Ludwig. Maybe I do come off of, Ludwig and come down to Hideki. But I am still, squeezing in two, or I should say a Scotty and a 9. I'm absolutely fine doing double sixes, at least. I actually don't hate the idea of a triple six lineup every blue moon. But here we have average of 7,900. Maybe you like a Keegan Bradley. Maybe you're willing to take a chance on a Justin Thomas. I'm not, but he's certainly the pivot in the area. Sepp Straka is going to be the chalky play in the upper sevens. That's why I'm trying to slow, or at least limit my use of Sepp Straka. I love him this week, but it looks like he's the only player garnering attention in the upper sevens. So when that's the case, it's just really, really hard to recommend to play him because you're just not gaining anything by using him. Hey, Joanne, good evening. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Fading Scotty this week, just as much value below. I don't hate that. I'm just going by the ownerships on Fantasy National. To me, it is simply crazy that he is the least owned player in the 10Ks after one bad week. And we're calling it bad when he finished middle of the pack at the U.S. Open, at a very difficult U.S. Open, in the sense that course was not set up well for Scotty. It just wasn't. Hey, Derek, thanks for jumping in chat. We got a full house tonight. I love to see it. Glad that you all got the message that I was running a little bit late. So, good evening. Much appreciated. So, that's why I am going to be using Scotty, because I just don't think Pinehurst set up well for him. And I think TPC River Highlands will. But you're right, Joanne. Absolutely. There is plenty of value in going Xander and Ludwig. Or Xander, well, if I could spell his name, apparently. There we go. Xander and a Ludwig. Xander and a Hovland. Ludwig and a Matsuyama. There's plenty there. I understand if you want to play Morikawa. I'm just fading the ownership. Actually, I'm fading the ownership and I'm fading his course history because he has not been good here. But I understand if you want to play Colin Morikawa. The guy's on a heater. Absolute heater. I'm a little cautious on Cantley this week, so I'm going to fade him as well. I'm mainly in these two in the 9Ks. That's why I was trying to highlight the double 10 or double 5-digit lineups. But there's plenty of 6K plays that I like. And if you go Xander and Ludwig, you got 8,000 per player. You could probably go to a Tagala, who doesn't seem to be getting astronomical amounts of ownership. And then 7,300 kind of passes the Denny McCarthy. I don't like a whole lot in the bottom sevens. I try to limit myself from going down any further than Denny McCarthy because I have some concerns about Seabez this week. And while Poston rated out well, I just don't like his ownership. I'm afraid it's going to creep up a little bit higher than what we think. Didn't realize Scotty will be that low owned this week. I have Patrick Cantley and Colin. Again, this is per Fantasy National. Who's to say that he will be the lowest owned? He might be the highest. But I do think people are going to overreact to by Scotty's definition, a poor performance. at the U.S. Open, or by Scotty's standards, a poor performance. I do think people will overreact to that and gravitate more towards a Xander or a Ludwig. So that's why I'm going to make sure I am overweight on Scotty. But don't get me wrong, I'm going to use all three of these guys, and that's why I've been trying to show you the different ways to build all of these double 10 lineups. And that's why I gave you several players in the 6Ks, because I am almost exclusively going superstars and super scrubs. I might do a regular stars and scrubs build where I do a 10K, I do a 9, I'll do an 8. Like, really, if we did a quote normal stars and scrubs, like, I'm trying to stop at Denny McCarthy, which doesn't give me a whole lot of room elsewhere. Like, if I go, I'll say Victor because I put Matsuyama in the other ones. Like Victor, Seth Tagala, Keegan Bradley, Brian Harmon. But the issue with this is, as you'll see, that ownership starts to creep up quite a bit, no matter who you put in there. Let's say we do Ludwig, the second most popular player in the 5 digits. Let's see, we need an 8K. We'll just try to be cheap and go Harmon, because now you're left at 6,800, but you're already at 8%, or excuse me, 80%. That's kind of like your target. Yes, this is a small field event, so you could probably get away with going a little bit higher in terms of a target total ownership, cumulative ownership. But, I just 68, Ben Griffin's getting some play. Like Austin Eckroat might be fine. But really, if I'm comfortable going down to a Seamus Power, to a Victor Paris, to an Eric Cole, that's why I'm trying to squeeze in so much more up here. And that's why I'm not doing a whole lot of stars and scrubs. That's why I've been doing super stars and scrubs, doing the double sixes, because I'm just not comfortable with a whole lot of players in the 7Ks. Like under Denny McCarthy, I just don't like hardly anything here. I just don't. Harris English maybe because of the course history, but I'm not in love with it. Do I like Zalatoris this week? No, I don't. Prove to me that he's healthy. I don't think anybody can. The irons have been good. The putter's, not always. Has been his weakest thing generally anyway. But like third to last in par 4s, and TBC River Highlands definitely emphasizes the par 4s. I just don't think he's healthy. So no, I'm not willing to take that chance. But if you are, you're going to gain a lot. You're going to gain a lot if you're willing to do it. That's not the risk I'm willing to take. But if you are, you're going to gain a lot by doing it. Because if that's the case, like we'll just leave the 6K empty for now. You go like Will Zalatoris. You could probably throw in a Sepp Straka. Pick whatever 8 that you like. Brian Harmon. I'm not particularly interested in Corey Connors. I love Brian Harmon. That's chalk I'll eat. Maybe you like Russell Henley. Maybe you like Keegan. Sahith Theegala. Go Keegan. I like Hideki and Hovland in terms of the 10s. Ludwig, Xander. Let's throw Scotty into this just because. Or, well, I would have if I could afford it then. Nope. So it has to be Ludwig. So, but if you're willing to do a Zalatoris, you're going to gain a lot because he's only, at least per Fantasy National, only projected at 3%. But that's why I've been doing the superstars and scrubs, because I'm comfortable doing, or there's quite a few players in the 10 or the 6Ks that I like. So I've just been mixing and matching, essentially. I'll do Scotty, Xander, and then filling it out with, like a Todd, and a Cole. And then the next lineup, I'll do that same thing and go like Cam Davis and Victor Paris. Like I've just been mixing and matching essentially these three. I will throw in Hovland and Matsuyama in some of them. You know, make it a Scotty and Matsuyama or a Xander and a Hovland. I will throw in these two at the top. But then just mixing and matching the 6K plays that I like. You know, Seamus Power, Victor Paris. I actually don't mind. I don't mind Andrew Putnam either. Like he's played pretty well here. Don't sleep on Andrew Putnam either. I did want to mention Andrew Putnam. So Power, Paris, Putnam, Eric Cole, Brennan Todd, and the last one I'll mention is Cam Davis. Nothing analytically lines up for him. This is just purely a gut feeling and an instinct on my part on Cam Davis. But that's what I have for you all in terms of a DFS Tactics show. I've got a couple answers to questions to answer here. Who's the winner this week? For me, I'm probably gonna say Ludwig. I'm just really high on Ludwig Aubert this week. We had some very interesting shouts in chat. Darnell mentioned Sam Burns, so it looks like he is the vote in the other for Sam Burns. We had a few Ludwig Aubert. We had a few Scotty Scheffler. Interesting that nobody at least has put in a vote for Xander. So, but I'll say Ludwig Aubert. That'll be my answer to the poll question. And then in terms of one and done, despite the fact that I had Xander last week, who finished in the top 10, gave me the safe floor that I wanted, I was sitting in fourth. Now I'm down to like 13th or 14th because Bryson was so widely owned. So I am going to try to need to start taking some chances if I want to climb back in the hunt for the win, at least of my division, for one and done. Having said that, my first click was Brian Harman, who's probably going to be pretty popular. But he was my first click. I've also thought about Ludwig Aubert. I can't remember if I used Cantley at the Memorial or not. I might have Cantley available. I do not have Scotty available. I don't have Xander available. I do have Hovland available too. So Hovland could be quite interesting this week. But my first choice, at least in terms of one and done, was Brian Harman. So that's where I'm at right now. Tommy Fleetwood, the winner. If that's the case, Derek, then I'm going to have a very, very bad week. I'm just completely off of Tommy this week. Rated out pretty middling. He is quite unique, especially in the 9Ks. He looks like he is the pivot in the 9Ks, but not a terribly great course history. He has not played Pete Dye Designs very well. So, whatever mileage you want to put on that, use how you wish. I'm off of Tommy this week, so if Tommy plays extremely well, especially if he wins, it's going to be a bad week for me. But I want to thank P, Darnell, Awaken, Josh, Joanne, and Derek for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Apologize again for the late start as the golf scramble that I was playing went extra long this evening. But thanks to you all for jumping in chat, and thanks to everybody else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking an in-depth look at sports statistics, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Some weeks it's positive, some weeks not so much. Hey Gabe, thanks for jumping in there right at the end. Play Thor Bjornsson. I actually don't hate Thor Bjornsson. There were just others with data that I liked, so I didn't mention him, Joanne, but I don't hate Thor Bjornsson, especially in a no-cut event. But thanks to everybody who jumped in chat. Reminder, I'm going to be over in Gabe's Substack chat here momentarily after I finalize the stream and all that stuff. So if you're not subscribed to Gabe's article, you are really missing out. We have a lot of good discussion. We talk about a lot of DFS. We essentially continue the DFS talk over there. If you're not following Gabe, his handle is in the description of the video. So go show him some support. I'll be over there momentarily, Gabe. But thanks to everybody for all the support. Love what I do. For all the wagers you've made this week for the Travelers Championship, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Travelers Championship, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.